I'll take a good war anytime in preference to this. You don't know what you're talking about. You aren't so young that you can't remember what it was like in the old days. Everybody living in fear, waiting for the bombs to fall. People dying of disease, and worried about dying from radiation and fallout. All the international rivalries, the power politics, the eternal pressures and constant crises. Nobody in his right mind would want to go back to. Underline that underline. We've come a mighty long way in the last 20 years or so. I switched to autopilot and sat back. Maybe that's the trouble, he said. Maybe we've come too far, too fast. I wasn't kidding about dropping those thermal nuts either. Underline something underline has to be done. We can't go on like this indefinitely. Why doesn't the board come up with an answer? Fraser shrugged his heavy shoulders. You think we haven't tried, aren't trying now? We're aware of the situation as well as you are, and then some. But there's no easy solution. The population just keeps growing, that's all. Nowhere to cut it down. Contagious diseases. At a minimum, average life expectancy up to 90 years or better. Naturally, this results in a problem. But a bomb won't help bring about any permanent solution. Besides, this isn't a local matter or even a national one. It's global. What do you think those summit meetings are all about? What about birth control? I asked. Why don't they really get behind an immigration movement? We can't limit procreation by law. You know that. Fraser peered out at the swarming streams on the sidewalk levels. It's more than a religious or a political question, it's a social one. People want kids. They can afford them. Besides, the Housing Act is set up so that having kids is just about the only way you can ever get into larger living quarters. Couldn't they try reverse psychology? I mean, grant priority to people who are willing to be sterilized. They tried it on a limited experimental scale about 3 years ago, out on the West Coast. I never heard anything about it. Damn right you didn't, Fraser replied grimly. They kept the whole project under wraps, and for a good reason. The publicity might have wrecked the administration. What happened? What do you suppose happened? There were riots. Do you think a man and his wife and 3 kids living in 3 rooms liked the idea of standing by and watching a sterilized couple enjoy a 4-room place with lawn space? Things got pretty ugly, let me tell you. There was a rumor going around that the country was in the hands of homosexuals. The churches were up in arms, and if that wasn't bad enough, we had to face up to the primary problem. There just isn't enough underline space underline. Not in areas suitable for maintaining a population. Mountains are still mountains and deserts are still deserts. Maybe we can put up housing in such regions, but who can live there? Even with decentralization going full blast, people must live within reasonable access to their work. No, we're just running out of room. Again the car halted on signal. Over the blasting of the horns, I repeated his query about immigration. Fraser shook his head, but made no attempt to reply until the horns had quieted and they were underway once more. As for immigration, we're just getting some of our own medicine inches return. About 80 years ago, we clamped down and closed the door on immigrants, established a quota. Now the same quota is being used against us, and you can't really blame other nations for it. They're facing worse population increases than we are. Look at the African Federation and what's happened there in spite of all the wealth. And South America is even worse in spite of all the Reclamation projects. 15 years ago, when they cleared out the Amazon basin, they thought they'd have enough room for 50 years to come. And now look at it, 200 million. That's the latest figure we've got. So what's the answer? I asked. I don't know. If it wasn't for hydroponics and the agriculture controls, we'd be lit right now. As it is, we can still supply enough food, and the old supply and demand takes care of the economy as a whole. I have no recommendations for an overall solution or even a regional one. My job, the board's job, is regulating housing and traffic and transportation in Chickagee. That's about all you can expect us to handle. Again they jolted to a stop and the horns howled all around them. I sat there until a muscle in the side of his jaw began to twitch. Suddenly he pounded on the horn with both fists. "Shut up," he yelled. "For the love of heaven, shut up." Abruptly he slumped back. "Sorry," he mumbled. "It's my damn headache. I've got to get out of this job getting you down." "No, it's a good job. At least everybody tells me so. 25 hours a week, $300. The car, the room, the telescreen, and liquor and yellow jackets. Plenty of time to kill, unless it's the time that's killing me." "But what do you want underline?" I stepped on the accelerator and they inched along. Now the street widened into 8 traffic lanes and the big semis joined the procession on the edge of the downtown area. "I want out," I said. "Out of this." "Don't you ever visit the national preserves?" Fraser asked. "Sure I do. Fly up every vacation. Take a tame plane to a tame government resort and catch my quota of 2 tame fish. Great sport. If I got married, I'd be entitled to 4 tame fish. But that's not what I want. I want what my father used to talk about. I want to drive into the country without a permit, mind you, just to drive wherever I like. I want to see cows and chickens and trees and lakes and sky." "You sound like a naturalist." "Don't sneer. Maybe the naturalists are right. Maybe we ought to cut out all this phony, progressive phony piece that passes all understanding. I'm no liberal, don't get me wrong, but sometimes I think the naturalists have the only answer. But what can you do about it?" Fraser murmured. "Suppose for the sake of argument that they are underline right. How can we change things?" "We can't just underline. We'll underline ourselves to stop growing, and we can't legislate against biology. More people in better health with more free time are just bound to have more offspring. It's inevitable under the circumstances, and neither you nor I nor anyone has the right to condemn millions upon millions of others to death through war or disease." "I know," I said. "It's hopeless, I guess. All the same, I want out." He wet his lips. "Fraser, you're on the board here. You've got connections higher up. If I could only get a chance to transfer to agriculture, go on one of those farms as a worker." Fraser shook his head. "Sorry, you know the situation there, I'm sure. Right now there's roughly 90 million approved applications on file. Everybody wants to get into agriculture. But couldn't I just buy some land